We're joined by Teresa Njoroge, who is the founder of Clean Start Africa. She has a very interesting story, and she has very many stories that she has come up with since she wrote her own story. Teresa, good morning.
Good morning.
Karibu sana to Fixing the Nation.
Asante.
Good to see you here. Bright colors.
There's some theme around brightness today.
Yeah. You came on a good day. Usually, if you ask Mariam and Eric, I am in black. More often than
Maybe
not.
she sensed today's the day.
I think so.
You know?
Between your nice eyeshadow, Mariam, and the jacket.
Right?
Yeah. I'm proud of us today.
I'm not just
Rainbow, but not the coalition.
Not the What's stopping us from forming one? Surely.
You know? Teresa, Jared is going to give you the day's quote, and let's hear your interpretation of it as we get into the conversation.
Yes, today's quote was something that was actually said on this show by one of our guests. And he said, if you want to fix the nation, start by fixing the family. Right? That was by Gerard Gitonga, the principal magistrate for Milimani Family Court. We had a conversation with him about family matters, mediation, all of those. And he said, from what I've observed, you really want to fix a nation, you have to start by fixing the family. What do you make of that?
Yeah. Such true words, such powerful words. And I say that because 90% of the women whom we work with, who are incarcerated and formerly incarcerated, are single mothers, sole breadwinners of their families. And now what happens is that because the father figures are not part of this family, when mom goes into prison as the sole primary caregiver of that family, these children are left on their own. Unfortunately, their journeys towards dropping out of school, into the juvenile justice system, and so much more delinquency, including their own traumas, begins at that particular moment. Now we see it firsthand, importance of family, values, and the family unit being together. And just how a nation, just from that little unit is disintegrated. I mean, if you walk into industrial area, because this is my day-to-day work, if you just walk into industrial area this morning, thousands and thousands and thousands of young men, the prison population, youth, 65% below the age of 35, who have never had a fast job, didn't have great role models, the upbringing, So it goes back to the family. How are we bringing up and how are we investing in our families? That unit, it means a lot.
Wow. Before we go into your story, I still want to ask you something on that. Given that there's a new normal, so to speak, family, the traditional setup of family, day to day, we're just seeing there's new realities that people have to accept, right? So you've spoken to the ideal. You are in a setting that has role models, people who are present. A lot more people now are in single-parent households, perhaps don't even have, not just because of that, because single-parent households have still been able to bring some of the best people in the world. But what's your thought on how we can now how we can fix the family within the current setup, which is, I think in countries like the UK, single-parent households has now surpassed 50% of the population, which means it's a reality. So how do we fix things within that new normal, so to speak?
Yeah, that's our new normal indeed. And it takes a village. I think that village is what we're missing on, because in my day-to-day, the 90% of the single mothers who then go to prison as a sole caregiver and leave these children behind. These children are not left with a village that's meant to care for these children. They're left on their own. So when we say that it takes a village, whether it's the neighbors, whether it's, we truly need to care for each other, because as much as it's our new normal today, it's not like we didn't have that reality years back. Those realities were still there, but you wouldn't find a child on their own. You wouldn't find people struggling on their own. There's that Ubuntu, there's that togetherness. I am because you are. It's truly been eroded. We don't care so much about each other. And, you know, when we talk about family, indeed, it's not just mother, father, children. It's the village, caring for one another and caring for each other. There's a lot of self-centeredness, I must admit, because even when you look at why in the first place are all these people, the young one especially, ending up in prisons, for example, or not getting justice, there was self-centeredness. Funds that were meant to go into education are not going into education. Funds that were meant to go into health are not going into health. Funds that were meant to go into providing for employment and decent means of livelihood are ending up in a few people's pockets, you know? So you find that while this might not be my direct family members, by the fact that they pocketed those funds or redirected those funds, I miss an opportunity to go to school. I miss an opportunity to get the health services that I need. I miss the opportunity to get employment and so on and so forth. Yeah. So that's the sense of family. That's the sense of Utu and Ubuntu, you know, that we are lacking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oof. Okay.
So, Teresa, you founded Clean Start, and this was born out of your own experience of having been inside prison, spending time inside prison, and then coming out and deciding the people that I've left behind there need support. So let's start with Teresa outside prison, Teresa into prison. How did you end up there?
Okay, so I worked within the financial sector with various banks in this country, this lovely country of ours. And then I unfortunately handled a fraudulent transaction unknowingly. And I ended up being maliciously arrested because the arresting officer categorically said to me, I do know you did not commit this crime. However, I am proceeding with the arrest, and proceeded with a very wrongful prosecution that led to a false incarceration. And there were requests to pay bribes for the case to be dropped. And, you know, when you know your values, it's very easy to make a decision. It was a no for me. But doing the right thing as, you know, a citizen who loves this country and wants to do the right thing, I ended up behind bars. It was being behind bars that I came to learn the realities of millions of Kenyans. You know, when we say that, I think now we are at about 10 million Kenyans who live below the poverty line. The statistics around the high rates of unemployment and just not having gainful employment. You know, sometimes when we look at those statistics, they're just numbers to us. But for me, being wrongfully at Langata Women Maximum Prison, I met the women who make up those statistics in the hundreds who would say to me, my journey to ending up behind bars was, number one, I dropped out of school at primary level. Okay. About 35% or so of those behind bars never had the primary certification. And they make up those statistics that we keep talking about. So those statistics began making realities of the fact that these are truly people who are affected by some of the decisions our leaders, and even we ourselves as citizens, make on a day-to-day basis. It was from seeing the pains and hearts of these women that, you know what, I couldn't wait for my date for release to leave Langata Women Maximum Prison. Hundreds of these women were like, I don't want to leave prison. And it broke my heart.
I don't want to leave prison?
I don't want to leave prison.
Why?
The realities of life on the outside. I don't have rent. Where will I live? I can't afford food to provide for myself or my children, because some of these women are unfortunately accompanied by their children behind bars. So you can imagine realities of children growing up in prison. What an environment, you know? And seeing these women leave prison and then strategically position themselves to be arrested by the city council, you know, the Kanjos, the Kamata Fridays, and end up back into prison. Why? There is a roof over their heads, there is some food, and we're talking about this.
And the security.
And the security. I mean, if prison is comfortable for some of members of this country, You know, sometimes when I was working at the bank, I couldn't imagine that we've got sisters and brothers in this country whose esteems are so low, and it's because of their realities in life. So that's what opened my eyes towards setting up Clean Start and offering decent means of livelihood and building their esteem and, you know, looking into justice from a different perspective.
Right. You know, the idea of people wanting to stay in prison because they're guaranteed food, a roof over their heads, medical in some place. I've always thought of that as a Western idea. I know people in Western prisons are like, you know what, it's not so bad in here. I get this, I get that. I
get a meal.
I didn't think about it from a Kenyan lens. And to think that even with the conditions of our prisons, there are people who are like, this is the best place for me, super scary. But I want to just thread the justice system, you going through it. What were the biggest red flags, you know, the most problematic areas? Obviously, it was the arresting officer, you said, told you point blank.
Yeah.
But how did then that continue? If it's a wrongful arrest, how do we then continue all the way to you being prosecuted? And, you know, there's no point of intervention where someone is like, this is not right.
You know, as a lay Kenyan, you know, you don't understand the laws and how the criminal justice system operates. You know, it's not your fallback to look into what are the laws and how does this criminal, because you're a law-abiding citizen, and so you just wake up to, you know what, go to work and fend for yourself. And educated as I was at that particular time, and that I could even afford legal representation, which is very expensive. Apparently, 81% again of those behind bars cannot even afford legal representation. So some of the red flags for me were, for example, first and foremost, you're subjecting someone from the streets who does not even understand the law and how the criminal justice system works. And without legal representation and understanding the language and the culture, they go through that system, and, you know, something that looks so simple, you end up behind bars. So it was at first that injustice, because I could see, while I can afford legal representation, 3/4 of the people coming in here can't afford that. But it was the scary part of the fact that wanajuana kwa vilemba. So even my own lawyer, who understands what's going on within this system, is not 100% on my side, because they know what's happening. And so literally he came to Langata and said to me, well, you've now been convicted and I am not representing you beyond this. Wow. And I'm like, what on earth? I thought you were on my side.
This is someone you were paying.
Pretty much.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's those gaps with it's broken for especially those who are just as impacted. But there are some people who are benefiting from the system as it is. You know?
Yeah. So what other systemic irregularities exist within the prison system that make it difficult for it to carry out its work? Because prison essentially is also supposed to work as a rehabilitation space. By the time you're being assimilated, there are certain characteristics you've been able to pick to be, quote unquote, a better member of society. So you've talked about wrongful arrest and prosecution. What other systemic barriers exist within the prison systems?
I think there's also, you find that we've sort of pretty much committed the same crime, but then again, we are incarcerated for different periods of time. So you wonder what metrics is used to determine that this one is much longer, but, you know, it's up to the, you know, decision of the magistrate or the judge. And then, you know, you'll be behind bars, you know, 20, 25 years, and then when you leave, you've absolutely got nothing in your pockets. There's so many people who live with absolutely zero, but you are working behind bars. So I know we've progressed quite a bit. We actually have the Kenya Correctional Services Bill 2025, which is looking into amending a lot of things. My hope is that we can look into compensating the labor of the incarcerated so that when they leave, they have something to kickstart their lives with. Because labor that's not compensated, it's
slavery.
slavery at the end of the day. When you look at things like certificates of good conduct, I think that's something we also need to look into as a country, because if I can get a certificate of good conduct post my incarceration, I think that's an area as a country we need to look at, so that people are accorded a genuine second chance. Because if 10 years post my incarceration and release, every time I request for a certificate of good conduct in this country and they take my fingerprints and realize that the records show I had been incarcerated, and it shows on my certificate of good conduct, then that means that if I come and present it to you, you'll think twice, especially in a country where we've got graduates, people with clean records who are give me a fair chance because I did pay for the offense that I committed. But even as we look into that, as a country, we do know that 70% of those we're incarcerating are due to social economic poverty-related issues. I think it's a time we looked to ourselves and looked into alternative dispute resolutions, non-custodial sentencing, the bylaws for each county. As a governor, as the county authorities, look at how your people will not get incarcerated just because of very minor misdemeanors. There are all these structural barriers that don't accord justice to so many Kenyans. And I believe people in spaces of influence, duty bearers, right holders, can bring change as soon as today if they wanted to.
Teresa, please explain what you've just said. 70% of those incarcerated are in there because of economic and socio-economic related issues. What does that mean?
So what happens is that we've got what we call the petty offenses laws within our penal code. And just to put some context into it, Kenya inherited a lot of its systems from, our colonial systems, the Brits. Now, this was set up primarily to control the natives, the Kenyans, when they were resisting colonial rule. So you'll find that something like walking past particular areas, which we now call those laws loitering with intent,
drunk and disorderly.
Some very minor. They're still in our petty offenses laws, which sits in our penal code. So when the chiefs, local administrators, police are arresting and taking you to the court of law, they are allowed by law to prosecute you based on the fact that you were loitering. But these are very, I don't want to call them racist or, they're very discriminatory laws.
They're colonial.
Why? Very colonial, that are still with us 60, how many years later? So what will happen is, if you and I are walking just outside Nation here, us, we're not loitering. But 2-3 of our brothers who are walking somewhere in Madare, somewhere in the rural place somewhere on a Friday evening, they are loitering. Unfortunately, because of their social economic status, first and foremost, they're not employed. So they cannot pay the fine. They cannot pay for legal representation. Their poverty.
Can't pay the bribe.
Can't pay the bribe, unfortunately, So it's those, a lady who does not even know how to write her name, puts her wares. And these women ask you, who have I killed? I was just trying to sell my tomatoes, worth 500, 600 bob, to take some unga home. When she's arrested, she's like, my goodness, I didn't even kill anyone. A lot of these people do not even know why they're in prison in the first place, because they don't understand. So it's those petty offenses, misdemeanors, they are not danger to society. And prison is meant to incarcerate and put in custody those who are danger to society. So why are we taking someone who was walking, someone who's just putting their wares? We can divert those.
So it's petty offenders who are basically crowding our prisons. And it's
70%.
Loitering, evil, without intent,
drunk
you're arrested, you're drunk and disorderly, ufanya nini, umeuza vitu, you're hawking your wares. It's those people who are behind prisons.
Yes.
How does incarceration affect them?
very
because
negatively.
I am here. I mean, I was innocently going about my day. I've been arrested. I've been taken before. Yorona, Chini, Ndani, Mariamu, industrial area, or Langata. How does that affect them?
First and foremost, it's the trauma, the emotional anguish immediately through this entire process, because they're not even understanding what this is about. Secondly, it's the invisible, unseen victims of that arrest, the children that they were fending for, who have been left by themselves. Their journeys in life will never be the same again. That particular evening, as they wait for mom or dad to come back and doesn't come back, with no one to explain to them where they went to, sets them up on a spiral. That's the same night they will get abused. That's the same night they will sleep hungry. That's the same night that they will be kicked out of that house that they now cannot fend for. Now, this woman or man has now begun this journey behind bars. 6 months, it's short sentences. And you know, oh my goodness me, that entire journey from prosecution, you know, all the way to incarceration, it's a time that will, to undo that in the life of that person will take years. Even a day through that process takes years to undo. By the time they come back to try and reconcile with children who are so angry, traumatized, again takes years. Now remember, it's not like they were earning in there. So they come out even worse off. Now they cannot even get a certificate of good conduct. They don't have any capital. Then they have what we call stigma. Sikutaki, well, no one wants to know why you are in prison. When ni mwizi, when ni muwaji, the stigma. So now they're in this secondary prison for the rest of their lives because of the stigmatization that they're an ex-con.
Something that happened once. We shall go into a break shortly. When we come back, take us through the injustice that then spreads outside. We've just said, so this person is going through some unjust system. But then, like you've mentioned, there are the children who are left. There are those who go into prison with their children.
Yes.
Right? And what happens to that child? Like you just mentioned briefly, and you can tell us more in detail, the child who is brought up in a prison, 4 walls of a prison. What happens to them through life? And then, at the end of this all, we must say, how do we fix it? Yeah. We must look for a fix. We're having a conversation with Teresa Njoroge. She's a Clean Start founder, Clean Start Africa. And this is an organization that supports people who are through the prison system, coming out of the prison system, and reintegration back into society. And also, you'll tell us whether you also help them in seeking justice during and thereafter. We'll be back shortly. This is Fixing the Nation, one conversation at a time.
We were having conversations off air just around the sort of levels of injustice that we see in our criminal justice system. But I wanted to ask, our prisons are, you know, run by government. Are they parastatals technically, or state departments?
No.
What are they?
It's a state department. It's government owned.
It's government owned state department.
Yes.
All right. They are not private entities. So who does it benefit to have people who are petty offenders be then in prison for long periods of time? Even when, as a judge, as a magistrate, you can tell that this person will not be able to afford bail, and the only other option is now. They'll not be able to afford bail. The only other option is jail.
Exactly.
Yeah. Who does this benefit?
So, first and foremost, this is such a disservice to this country, because for every head that's incarcerated, that's taxpayers' money. It's our money that's going to keep these people behind bars who aren't meant to be behind bars, while we could be using those funds to empower our own who don't even have those jobs in the first place, because prisons are meant to incarcerate and keep in custody those who are a menace to society, so that we keep society safe. So if we're taking people who are not meant to be incarcerated behind bars and primarily continuing to punish the poor, the vulnerable, using taxpayers' money to keep them behind bars. And it's not just in Kenya. Globally,
yeah.
prisons are underfunded. So even as these funds are being released from the National Treasury, Kitty, specifically to put people behind bars, we're still underfunded. And it's not just the Kenya prisons, it's globally. This is a sector that's always not resourced well enough.
Right.
So unfortunately, but I'm truly grateful for the Kenya Correctional Bill 2025 that's coming to look into making things better within our State Department of Corrections. Unfortunately, it's just a few people who benefit from the current status. What's happening is that the incarcerated and a majority of the citizens in Kenya, they're not benefiting from this arrangement. It's actually taking us behind.
Who is benefiting?
I think I would say it's the people who are, you know, the right holders, the duty bearers, just a few of them who continue to perpetuate this, because if you know that 70% of the population does not need to be there, yet on a day-to-day basis, you continue to make the same decision that's not working, that means that it's benefiting you. You
So
know?
it's like a business venture.
Exactly.
Those people need to be fed, so you've got to supply cabbage, unga ugali and all those things. So, and here is a budgetary allocation because we have to take care of 70,000 people in prison. And Jano, wewe uko na supply contract ya cabbage. So we have to keep it running.
Yeah, part of the ecosystem. And also, I think, alluding to some of the people who benefit through maybe promotions by making some of those decisions. So it's the ecosystem of the justice system that benefits over and above the majority of the Kenyan population.
Exactly.
Daniel Ndongo says, criminal justice system and litigation in Kenya, right from arrest to conviction, is a business, just like politics is.
Yeah.
Okay, so they've literally summed it up.
Yes.
When you were incarcerated with your children?
Yes.
Okay.
I was incarcerated with my infant firstborn daughter. Unfortunately, I had just been blessed with her. So she came with me into prison. And while I thought that was not the norm, I found other children behind bars. And to date, mothers are accompanied by their children to prison. And you can imagine the prison environment not even being conducive for women. And why do I say that? These were institutions that were built for men who were resisting colonial rule. Now you can imagine women coming into those facilities that are not conducive for them. And then now add on to that children. And then, you know, the prison culture, prison language, these children get affected. By the time I was incarcerated, we would stay with our children up to 7 years. But now they've brought it down to 4 years. While I understand they want mom and child to continue bonding, which is good. But the first 1,000 days of a child in the world cements the foundation of this individual for the rest of their life. So if part of this 1,000 days of this child, the foundation that will determine the rest of their life is behind bars, we're setting these children up for failure. The traumas, the culture, the language, the mannerisms that was inculcated in them growing up behind bars. And the most painful part is the fact that it was avoidable. But because we're just used to custodial sentencing, we congest these prisons, then we get a budget to decongest prisons. We're always having an exercise to decongest prisons.
Yeah.
COVID time, prisons were decongested throughout the COVID period. Did crime increase? No. But immediately after COVID, the numbers went back up. Why? What's the logic behind that? It's because we reverted back to our norm of getting the poor, it's not the criminals. Otherwise, we would have said that during COVID, when we decongested prisons, because it was a requirement, crime rates went up. It didn't. So that goes to show you that these 70% who are incarcerated, they are no harm to society.
I want to hang there on the children that are, with their moms in prison. Where else though? Because I feel that there may be situations where their families are not in a position to take care of them or don't want to take care of them. The alternative is then having them essentially get into orphanages. I'm struggling to see the alternative.
I'm glad that you're struggling around it. And the reason why I'm glad you are is because each and every Kenyan need to struggle with the fact that the woman who did not go into prison accompanied by their child, where is that child? Who takes care of that child? And we see these children loitering or wherever it is that they are, because they'll either be taken by... Let me tell you, when a police officer is preparing that charge sheet, there's nowhere that police officer asks you, as a woman, do you have any children? Who is now taking care of those children? It's nowhere in the charge sheet. It's just you as the woman. And then the process begins. At what point do we ask, by the way, this woman, she had children. Where are they? We've put a blind eye as if we do not know that 90% of these women that we've put into prison are mothers. But we don't think about the children. So while we might be seeing a smaller population of these children who have accompanied their mothers to prison, which in most cases should be avoided, we put a blind eye to the children, 3-4 children that she has left at home. So, again, back to government. It's their responsibility. If for sure you must take this woman behind bars because she was hawking, because she was loitering, yeah? So that's reason enough for you to take her away as a caregiver. Then, as a government, ensure that you're providing all the needs, education, housing, those basic needs of a human being that the government should take care of. So take care of those for all the children that have been left behind by the incarcerated parents.
Then what would you recommend as an alternative for being incarcerated with your child?
There are so many alternatives. There are, first and foremost, the reason why we're coming to a court of law is justice, because you've broken a law. Now, if we want to ensure that justice has been served, if I was hawking, the solution is not to put me behind bars. Even if you put me behind bars, have you accorded justice because I had broken the law of hawking? No, you didn't. So how do we ensure that we've accorded justice in this matter? If I was loitering, if I was hawking, and all this, if I was brewing changa, how do we accord justice? I think that we cannot solve social economic issues using a criminal justice lens. We will not solve those social economic issues. The more we are incarcerating this 65% under youth, unemployed, and so on and so forth, we're actually just putting a bandage to a simmering problem. Let's address the root problem. It's social economic issues, it's poverty. Let's find economic empowerment and solutions for our youth and for these people who are committing these petty misdemeanors. Let's change the bylaws. So we will not even be discussing the issue of separating the mother from the child. Back to the very first thing that we spoke about families, about fixing our communities. You will, even animals, do not separate the caregiving mother from the children. Animals. We human beings are literally tearing apart the very fabric of our society. Why? Things that we can resolve amongst ourselves. Mama alikuwa nauza hizo mboga. As a governor, as whoever you are, change those bylaws. See to it that kama wana hawk, kuna soko tumetayarisha. Pali wataenda kuuza hizi vitu. Sio lazima to separate this woman kutoka kwa watoto. This youth, men you're rounding up and you arrest them. Walikuwa wana loiter. unawapeleka industrial area ama pali pengine. It's such a burden to prisons in the first place.
So it doesn't fix anything.
It doesn't fix anything.
It's a vicious cycle.
It just continues. It just continues. It's not 60 plus years, it hasn't worked.
Right. Why do we keep doing the same thing, hoping for different results? This Kenya Correctional Services Bill 2025, what does it propose?
It's proposing, decent environments for the officers, which is incredible. I think I saw they've proposed to build 28,000 housing units for the officers, because truth be told, and of course it's not just officers, they also want to look into how the incarcerated live. But truth be told, even the wardens are truly overwhelmed. They are overwhelmed. And as I said, state departments of corrections, not just in Kenya but globally, are normally underfunded. So they don't even have enough resources. And if you go into a lot of these prisons and you look at how the wardens live, we truly need to invest in their welfare, how they live, their remuneration. They are paid so poorly, and yet we have accorded them such a hefty job to rehabilitate our society. How now? And you've given them how long? 6 months? Let me ask you, if you arrested a young person loitering, then you go and tell a prison officer, within 6 months, I want you to have rehabilitated and changed this young boy. If for 35 years you couldn't in society, how do you expect the prison officer to rehabilitate this person in 6 months? It's not possible. So I love the fact that this correctional bill is bringing some of these things to light, because these are people. They are part of our society, and we are overburdening them with our issues that we are unable to fix in society, and telling them within a year we want you to have fixed these hawkers, to then come back into our society as now entrepreneurs. How? Do we have colleges in prison where these prison wardens will now take them through an entire entrepreneurship training? Are they going to get capital? How exactly do we want these prison wardens to fix those we've been unable to fix for decades on the outside?
Zero resource, zero anything. Right, that's one. The housing units.
Housing units, the pay. They're looking into a relationship between families and those who are incarcerated, because it's a very key area when it comes to reintegration. They're looking into the prison enterprise and how it will, bring in revenue, not just to support the prison establishment, but also, compensate those who are incarcerated. So the prison enterprise as well is something that the bill is looking into.
There's also another piece of legislation that was taken to Parliament, I think last year but one, that was seeking to amend the penal code. And it was going to remove some of these things, some of these petty offenses, just decriminalize them, while at the same time also removing some of these words, that are used to just call you, for example, on mental health, and how you describe somebody with mental health. You just call them
a vagabond,
and such other words, just to remove them. It's been sitting in Parliament, not moving much. The National Council on the Administration of Justice also sat and created a report that said, this is how we can decongest our prisons, and also give more leeway to the judicial officers, magistrates and judges, particularly magistrates, who deal with these petty offences cases. It's within your discretion, yes, but also pursue more non-custodial sentencing as much as possible. And there was a PS then for correctional services, Mary Bodoni, who's now in health. She was pushing it, and then she was removed. Now, when you look at all these things, you see, on paper, there's progress being made to make sure that we now bring back our justice into justice. But vertical ground is they just stall somewhere. How can we make these things move, Teresa? How can we ensure that Parliament deals with this penal code and decriminalizes some of these offenses? How can we make sure that the judiciary then truly and clearly adopts non-custodial sentencing as the first choice for any judicial officer. I look at you, I see you've been brought here, and this is it. Let me give you a non-custodial sentence. I see that you are entitled to bail, but even if I told you to pay 5,000 shillings today for bail, you'll not afford it. So there's no point of me telling you to lipa bail ya 5,000 ama wende ulale remand. How do we push it?
You know, one day, even right now as we're discussing, there are those who are being presented as we speak here. There are those who are being presented to a court of law this morning on these petty offenses across the country. And like clockwork, they will not afford the bail or fine, and they're going to end up in a correctional facility somewhere. There are also those who will be released today and will hit the streets with nowhere to begin. And like clockwork, it will continue. We have very progressive paperwork, as you say, whether it's bill, whether it's campaigns to decriminalize, and so on and so forth. And I'm glad that we've got some visionaries within the system, from the Chief Justice to some of the magistrates and PS Correctional Services. We've got visionaries who want to see change. However, we cannot leave it just to them. And for change to happen, it's upon we the people. We cannot leave this to the leaders. Actually, it's not just about the leaders. For change to happen, citizens in this, it's about the people. We have to call a spade, and we have to do what it takes. And I'm just so glad that we're even having this conversation right here. But we need to take action. And what action do we need to take? Whether it's continuing to create this awareness, whether it's those who are impacted continue to speak up, whether it's pushing our legislatures to change these laws, delete, decriminalize poverty, it is upon we the individuals to take action, no matter how small it may look, but we must do something and take action. Because when we leave it to our leaders to do what they must, they can only do so much. And in most cases, their hands are tied. It's upon we the individuals to push and act however that action looks like. For example, just this conversation that we're having here, speak to your member of parliament, speak to your governor who can change some of these bylaws in your county. Visit the prison in your county. Just see how people are living in there, the children, and see how you can partner with the prisons to bring change in your county. Partner with some of these organizations like Clean Start Africa and see the change that they're trying to bring. The NCAJ, Legal Resource Foundation. There's so many people who are doing something. But unfortunately, there is a majority of us who just sit and wait for change to happen. It won't happen that way. And for example, the change that we are trying to build, for example, we are building it on historical change that has happened over time. So let's not sit and wait for someone else to do something. What are you doing to fix this nation?
Very good question.
Place to,
and a good place to end.
Really good place to end. What are we doing to fix this nation?
Give one to employers specifically as we wrap up the hour. Mwisio on Twitter, it's also very important and to sensitize employers that people leaving prison are not entirely unemployable. They deserve a fair chance. And Mama Africa says, listening to Teresa this morning talking about the effect of the justice system on families, oh dear Lord. Some initial reactions, but very, very heart-wrenching, but informative conversation, Teresa. We can't thank you enough so much for the work that you're doing. Please continue doing it. And of course, we'll continue this conversation because the criminal justice system is wide. Alternative dispute resolution is something we've been digging into over the last few weeks as well. We want to see how they intersect. We want to see how we can find justice and perhaps non-custodial sentences for petty offenders, all these things. We'll pull at them. Hashtag is fixing the nation NTV. I'll see you. We're about to get, yeah, we'll be back after this, actually.
Yeah.
We have another conversation. Of course, we only have 2 more hours left, but still fantastic conversations. We'll be back after this. # continues to be Fixing the Nation and TV.